Exactly. Kumlan Ablat Gemara, it's Tainus Esther. Today's doctor is Abchol Beis Aleph, discussing the argument in the Bayi Robert whether Yeush Shleimadas. Had you known that you lost something, you would abandon hope because it was sinner, but you didn't know at the time. According to Abayi, Loi have a Yeush, according to Robert is. We asked a number of questions on Abayi, and today's Gemara will ask on both. So we're up to the Abchol Beis Aleph, about 5 lines to the top of the page. Tashma, come in here. Shotaf Nohar Koidov Eitzav Avanav. The river swept away its beams, pieces of wood, its stones, and it placed it in someone else's field. That owner of that field can keep it, it is his. Why is that? The nation is Yahshua, because we know that the owner abandoned hope, because this is something that everybody's aware of when there's a flood like this. And therefore the owner gave up hope. Sounds like the only reason why you can keep it is because we know that the owner would abandon hope. Hostam, if we didn't know, in other words, it would have been Yehush Shaloi Medas. Here, finally, we have a proof that supports Abaye, that Yehush Shaloi Medas. If you weren't aware, there's no Yehush. Says Gemara, there's no proof. Rava will defend himself by saying, you know why over here we assume there's no Yehush? Not even according to Rava, because Yechol Lahatzel. It could be rescued. In other words, if he goes down there and chases after it, he'll be able to salvage or save his stuff. So therefore, as long as we did not hear that he was Meyayish, even according to Rava, we cannot assume that he was. Look at the Sefer. It says, if they were chasing after it, they made an obvious attempt to salvage it, then he was not Meyayish. Sounds like, but if he didn't make an obvious attempt, then you can keep it. Now, if you tell me he's able to salvage it, why you tell me that it's chasing after it? I feel even if it was not chasing after it, same thing. Wasn't if he's chasing, not chasing, if it's possible to be saved. And that's why, even according to Rava, we assume that he was not Miyayish, unless you know otherwise. Then why Dafke if he's showing us he's not Miyayish?
What's the minute? If you think he's not going to be Miyayish.
Exactly. What's if he's physically chasing after it? Why does he have to demonstrate to us that he's not being Miyayish? Says the Gemara, you could salvage it, but only if you do it so pretty much straight away. If he was chasing after it, he wasn't Yayish. But if he's not chasing after it, if he was not chasing after it, then that in itself tells us that he is Miyayish. So no problem with the Kundarov. Tashma coming in. It says, now we're going to do the flip side. The argument of Bava is that if you didn't know you lost it and you abandon hope, do we say Yehush Shalom Medas? I have no idea. Do we consider as if you were Yayish or not? The same thing implies the reverse. Gili Shalom Medas. Have a Gil. Not in a negative in a positive way. We'll see in a minute what we're talking about it. But Gili Shalom Medas, we'll talk about the case of Truma. If I later on showed that I was, had I known, I would have accepted straight away, but I didn't know until much later, and therefore it's called Gilus Lemidas. So it'll be the same argument. According to Baye, the fact is you didn't know, so just because later on you showed us you were happy, that doesn't help us. According to Rava, it would help us. So let's see how we can understand it right, which is the kasha. Start by coming here. Gates and how Amru we say if somebody gives Truma on someone else's behalf without their knowledge, it's a valid Truma, even though they were not aware. How does you? I go into somebody's field, and I collect with Tadam, and I give Truma without permission. Most of Shane and Linda were talking about over here that I'm giving Truma on your behalf without permission. The Rambam says, yeah, true, but I'm doing it on your behalf. There's from myself. We'll see in a minute. And the Rambam learns that I'm doing it for myself. But either way, you were not aware of it. If there's a possibility that it was stolen, there's no right to enter much truma. It's not good truma. But if it's not gezela, how do we know it's a minute? Truma is a truma. That's a valid truma. What's going on here? How in the world do we know if it's treated like it was stolen or not? The owner of this field comes home and he finds you there, and he found that you gave truma set aside. He makes the following statement. Klach Eitzel Yofis, you should have gone to the better quality fruits. How do we interpret that? They're being facetious. If you found taco better quality fruits there, then you take them seriously. Then truma to truma. At the time when you gave Truma, he had no idea. It's retrospective. So here we see that Gili, Shaloi, Midas, Havagil, had he known at the time, he would have been happy. So we're assuming he's happy now as well. Well, the lav, but if there are no better quality fruits, and obviously being facetious or being sarcastic, ain't Truma said Truma. What happens if Likto Habailim Lohaisifu if the owner physically went ahead and he added to whatever he did, then make it too much. We don't say that he makes that statement, but his actions speak louder than words because he went and added to your Truma, wants to be more generous because the average Truma is 1 out of 50. Generous people give 1 out of 40.
So
People are stingy.
When he said he like
Yeah, and even if there were no better ones, so he thought there were better ones. He wasn't being sarcastic. Otherwise, he wouldn't have accepted what you did. Then now the other question is according to Bai is simple. You found better ones. Truma might be at the time when you gave Truma, you had no idea. If you should have that years, then give us that Gili. And this is the beauty of the Gemara. Rava himself, who could have been happy that he won the argument, defended Abaya. It's talking about a case, the Shavya Shliach. He appointed this guy to be a Shliach from the outset. There's no Gili Shleim. So what's the whole thing here about when he came back home, he wasn't happy? I'll prove it to you. If he didn't appoint him a Shliach, would be a Truma, even if you hold that Gili Shleim Das have a Gili, but when it comes to Truma, you need to appoint him as a Shliach from the outset. How do I know? Well, we remember Yomar Kedusha of Mem Gimel, we learn out Shlichus from a number of places. And in Bava Kama, when we said we learn out Shlichus from, there we say we learn shlichus from either Meila and Tzricha together, put them that tell us that yes, shlich ma'aveda. So everywhere else, there's no shlich ma'aveda. There's concept of shlichus, or the Gemara starts off with Gittin or for Korban Pesach. But interesting, Rashi here and later on, Bava Metzia Daf, Rashi clearly says that the basis for shlichus is truma. Even though the Gemara itself seems to be unhappy, it says gam atem. Also, you should be the one who to give the truma. So basically, the Gemara is taking the flip side of Yesh Lemedas, that Gilish Lemedas would be the same argument. If you did something later to tell us, that it did indicate to us that if you would have known at the time, you would have been happy. So according to Bai L'Chayt, it shouldn't be valid because at the time he didn't know, and according to Rav it is. But yet this thing about Truma, the owner comes home later and he says, "Oh, you should have taken better klachets than Yafas men, and if the taka turned to be a better one, it's a valid Truma. How can it be a valid Truma? L'Chayt Gilish Lemedas according to Bai Loi Have Gili." So we're answering. He appointed him as a shlich. And we know it has to be because it says atem gam atem l'rabba shluchachem. We know that from there we learn how the concept of shlichus. And Rashi says mehocha nafkum. Says it here says later on from Truma, which we'll talk about another time. Why Rashi picks up from here we learn it out when in fact the Gemara itself in conditions it doesn't seem to conclude that way. But the bottom line is I pointed to the shliach. And ma'at when it comes to Truma, it has to be just like that you yourself, when you do it, you know what you're doing. The person does it for you has to know what you're doing. So even if you hold that schiyah mitam shlichus, it's not exactly shlichus. And here the pasuk clearly tells you ma'atem b'dayit. You have to know at the time. No, so what's going on here? Along my skin again, the Shabbos shliach. Bamley says he'll try and give Truma. He didn't tell him which ones give Truma from. There's Tommy the Balabais. Generally, a Balabais, they give Truma, he gives from the middle quality fruits.
So is that still Shalom and Dance?
No.
Once he appointed him as a shliach.
But the Balabas did not tell him what kind of thing. So what quality of fruits he should give, or crop, what quality he should give. Well, also even told me opposite, and he thought that he decided that the Balabas is a generous person who'll give him the best premium quality. Bob Balabais would tell you, Baba came and found him like klachetz the opposite, and that's when he told him, "Oh, you should have gone to even better quality." Even if the other is attack even better than that, so much of Truma, it's about Truma. The Mlav ain't too much of Truma, but it's not a valid Truma. And why is it a valid Truma? Not because Gilish Levidas, because since you didn't tell me, as if you gave me the right to decide for you which is the best, and I assessed you as a person I know that you want to be generous, you would like to give the best quality fruit. So it's not a question of Gilish Levidas here. And because of the and as we'll see more later, and Tesha brings on it, because it's a mitzvah, therefore we're allowed to be generous on your part. I'll say how long you wanted that. There's a famous translation there where he writes the Lula de Mustafina. He comes up with this wild idea that if somebody forgot to be mevatel chametz before Pesach, and then in the middle of Pesach he remembered that he had chametz, he left it behind the shul in his thing that he left bottles of whiskey. Says the Ktos on Pesach, you can make bittul. The Gemara clearly says, once it's 12 o'clock, he can't. So he says, it's a gili shalem adas. Had you remembered before Pesach, you would have done it. And gili shalem adas have a gili. Now, how can he say that when in fact we say that gili and yeosh are bound hand in hand, and by yeosh you pass like a bayah loy have a yeosh, so gili loy have a gili. But the Rambam paskins that gili shalem adas have a gili, and everybody wonders on the Rambam, how can the Rambam paskin gili shalem have a gili when the Gemara right here ties the two together? Anyway, so Tzos has a whole beautiful explanation there, based on the Gemara and Kedushin of Beis there, about the case of the person with the beer, and the guy came back and he gave the remnants of the beer to this woman, and the leftover hops, and he said, "Oh, you should have given better things." And look at how that fit into here. So Taisus there asked the same question, and he says, "The Shav Shliach, he made the guy Shliach to take care of all of his things, so therefore fits into the Gemara here." But the Gemara doesn't say that anywhere, and so therefore. Based on that, the Rambam, there's no nexus. The Gemara there argues the Gemara here. There's no nexus between Gila and Yerush, and based on that, the Tzos comes out this unbelievable chiddush. But he himself says that he is scared.
So
possible of myself.
There's
an argument to the Gemara here, and the Gemara in Kedushin Daf base. Back to the Gemara. The Gemara tells a story. He closed once it came chanced on the booster the orchard, the Moribadisig. I said, this is the order, the sharecropper came out, and Tommy brought them dates and money, pomegranates, I'm sure they come out. Sure, they sound like he threw it. It sounds very respectful. Anyway, I remember Rashi ate it, and Mazutra refused to eat. At the Hoch, in the meantime, also Moribadisig, and he found them. He said, my license, you should have given better fruits. Mazutra maintained his Isa, he didn't eat. He said to him, why aren't you eating right now? But time we learned evening, so you offered men to Truma, so they should have been retrospective, but from now on. Rava said, we don't say only when it comes to a case of truma. Why? From the mitzvah, he could be genuine. The nichle, Taka wants to hear the mitzvah and everything else. What do you think about what? He sees three chief rabbis sitting there, and so of course he's trying to be nice. He's trying to be nice, but he had no breda, so he didn't give it wholeheartedly. So I don't want to take part of it. Even though generally, Taisa says we know that a sharecropper, according to some, when he brings you, you're allowed to because it's from his cheshbon. So Taisa says it's only if he brings from his house. Here he took it from the orchard. So you have to rely that when it comes to dividing the crop, he'll tell the guy, by the way, I already took part of it by giving it to the Mazut Ramema. So and Mazut didn't trust him. Okay, back to we actually had a few weeks ago that Rashi compared to Mazut. So Taisa says that Godlum and Manu b'chachnu b'min. Anyway, it continues asking questions. But then and we know that in order for something to become prepared to Makabal Tumah, it has to be wet, and you have to be happy that it became wet. So what happens? A day you are talalei, and you didn't know that the dew fell onto the fruits you had on the roof, and then you came up, and the dew came down, and you saw it, and you were happy. Then it's as if what? That you're happy that it was placed there, and now the food became prepared to Makabal Tumah because you're happy it's wet. No, but let's say you didn't see it until it was totally dry. Even though you're not happy that it was wet, it's retrospective, and therefore ain't a b'chiyuta. It's not b'chiyuta. Time of Mai, this is now a proof to Abaya. Keep mishum deloy amarina. We don't say keep in the gloy meal so the hash v'nichalei mikornam. Now he's happy. It's retrospective. The fact is, he did not see these fruits wet at the time. It was on the roof. He only saw it now when it was dry, and he realized it was due in the morning. So we don't say gilish. So we say gilunas. Lo have a gilu. Supports Abaya. And Yehosam, no, they're totally different because the pasuk actually says ki yitain. The pasuk actually says when you make it wet. Ad sheyitin, you have to make it wet. He didn't do it. So was feeling then he came up and he found the dew on it. You didn't place the water on it. The dew came in the shemayim. So what's the difference? Hasam kinat papa. A papa asked the question. It says in the pasuk kiyite. But we read it kiyutan haketzad. How does that work? Kiyutan means you place. Kiyutan means you place on its own. Be'inan kiyutan dumi de chiyiten. Even if it happened on its own, but it has to be similar as if you did. How? Ma yitain ledas. Just when you put, you know what you're doing. Av kiyuta nami ledas. Even though normally we would say gili shalom ledas havagili, but here you had to know at the time, even though it happened on its own, you had to know at the time while it's wet that it happened, and you're happy. That's the only time we can say that kiyutan is similar to kiyite. So Rava would concede that in this case here, if you come upstairs to the roof and you see it now and you realize it was due in the morning, it doesn't help, even though you're happy. Toshma coming in. How do you know an object that was swept away by the river, that is permitted, the Chsiv, it says, this is what you should do to your donkey. This is what you do to your garments. You do this to all your objects of your brother. That was lost to him, and you found it. What? You have to return it. So we dash it. If it's lost him, creates a kaladam available to everybody else. There's an exception. Who is lost to him, and the Einim Mitzri ate a kaladam, nor is it available to anybody else. For example, swept away by the river, no one has access to it because it's swept away. If it's avudim men makol adam, then you have then the din is that you keep it. That's why already yesterday. Machlekes Rishonim, is this a din of Yirush, or is this a special din achmona shaya? The Torah's matter. Rashi in some of love there in Bava Kama says from here we learn out the whole concept of Yirush. Avudim men, if it's lost, you can keep it. Others say. Oh, so what does it say? Because Abu means we know for sure that you're Miyash.
Dropped in the ocean.
Like this one, swept away by the river. So it's gone. And now the Braisa continues. The Isura Dumia the Hetera. That Isur is similar to Heter. Ma Hetera, just like when it comes to Heter, it makes no difference. Bain the Isba Simon. Bain the Lesbo Simon. You can keep it. Even if there's a Simon, swept away by the river, you can keep it. Because Abu Mikol is Af Isura. So too when you're not allowed to keep it. For example, it is available to everybody and you have to announce it. Is being the Isba Simon, being the Lesbo Simon. Even has no Simon, but the owner was not aware that he lost it. So he was not Meyayish physically yet. Yehush Shalei Medas, Loy Haviyish. He would have been Meyayish had it known, doesn't matter. So you have to do it clearly like a Abaye. So you have to repudiate Rabba. Now it's a little bit difficult to understand this little piece of Gemara here because yesterday we learned exactly the same braysos, and the Gemara says they can be in the name of the kama. Like we want to say, the Gemara says in this case everybody's moed, in this case everybody's moed. Like we're going to say later on, which is not often we find the Gemara already planned what they're going to bring out later. Can be in the name of the kama. So Rabba knew about it. So what's Rabba arguing in the first place with the Baya? So the Chedi you have to conclude that this little section here that we're comparing Isa to Het is not part of the brayso. It was not the words of the Brisa. Clearly, if Rabbi knew about the Brisa before, why argue when the Brisa clearly says like a Baya? Must be the Gemara is concluding. The Gemara is concluding Rabbi Yochanan, who's saying this. Rabbi Yochanan is concluding this part of the Brisa. And Rabbi was not aware of this conclusion. He knew the Brisa, but he wasn't aware that it had Teda Dumi. And now it's clear that we reject Rabbi. Says the Gemara. The Hilchas Nekavos of the Bayah, the real exception to we pass on the Bayah because we have the price clearly. The Yal Kagam, Yud is Yeyush Lemadas, and Ayin is Eid Zaymim, and Lamed is Lechia Oymin Me'elav. The post that stands on its own, whether it's a post for Erev, and Kagam Kuf is Kedushin Shlaim Surabia. Give it like the two sisters. They cannot turn, and you can't go any further whether it's Kedushin or not. And Gimel is Gili Das by Get, and the Mem is Baramumel to Yavos Internet. Mumalachas, whether he's kosher later or not. Now that we have no Rav anymore, we have only a Baya to rely on. Anitamni the Zikr, these dates that the wind blows down. How can we eat them? Even according to Rav, even though they fall underneath a tree, so we recognize it comes from the tree. So how can we eat them? People want, because we say that that people, the owner of the tree, thinks that people might think that that the wind blew it away and it went somewhere else, and therefore the owner would have been miyash. Had the owner known that the wind blew it away, it would have been miyash. And according to Rav, yesh l'midas, have a yesh. But according to Baya, it's yesh l'midas. You had no idea. You thought it fell under the tree, and you thought people could recognize it comes from this tree. So therefore, how can we eat these things? The wind swept away. How can we eat them? And why a buyer? And you might and because chazusa mechich lav yam yayish straight away. He said, "Kim nikas gatzir amasim." Because the Ashkotsim and the Muslim that Eden because there are these creepy crawlies all around the place, then this guy, even though he knows it's next to the tree and whatever else, he thinks he'll never take it back. He abandons hope. So from the Chatzchila, he abandons hope. And Yasmer La B'nei Mechilinu. And and the Yisraelim, they never give up hope. What's that famous Purim Torah? Heinrich is blind. I'm trying to remember that, sorry. It says, a Chacham Eina B'Rosheh. So the opposite of Chacham or Rasha is Einav on the other side. It's like the Meichel side. And we know that Achashverosh was a Yassim because it says Hamas HaMelech Shechacha, the Shriger, the mother-in-law of Achashverosh's name was Shechacha, which means that he had no parents. He was a Yassim. And the Gemara says right here, Yasmin Lab B'nei Mechilin. The same don't have a Zayt Meichel. Therefore we know that he was blind. Famous Purim Torah.
How do we get from Shechacha to Yosef?
Yeah, because it's only the only yichus that Megillah describes is his mother-in-law, which means he had no parents. And yeah, this is a Purim Torah from a Talmud of some Sefer. Saying about it further, my Amalei, okay, my what's it in then? So l'chayda, they can be murder. How can you pick it up? Maybe it belongs to a yasum. We're talking about ba'aga. We're talking about a place where there are many different orchards, and ba'ada yasum. The majority of the people are not yasayim, so therefore we can keep you after the rave. What about, let's say we know for a fact that it is, let's say, yasum, or karkata mai. Let's say you had a big fence all around it, so the structure of Moshe cannot really get to it. You're right. It's taka asa because even the Bible would have known he would have been yayish, but or in this case, Allah is like a bay anyway. That yesh das love yesh. Says the Gemara. Okay, krich is b'shus Rabbi Mariel Shleim. Now we're going to go through the Mishnah. Bundles is Rabbi yours. Amar Rabbi says Rabbi. I feel there are two machlekes going to happen here, and one is dependent on the other. One is whether where you found it is that a simon. You know, I found it in a certain place in the corner. Can I if the guy comes and says, "Oh, you found it right there in the corner," is that a simon or not? Mokum is a simon or not. The other one is if there was a simon on it, but in the Shus Rabbah, do we say a simon ha'asr l'daris have a simon or not? A simon that will eventually get trampled on. And according to some of the training, the simon changes. So it could be the person gave you the wrong simon. His simon is actually on something else, but because the new simon had a big change a little bit, it became his simon. Or the simon is gone, and the person would abandon hope. So I feel there's a simon. When it says now in the Mishnah, it says there's a difference with the kriches on Shus Rabbah and Shus Yachid, and he says even Shus Rabbah, even if it has a simon, you can keep it. Almok so Rabbah simon also does have a simon because it could be trampled on, not a simon. Rav Baba says loy shanu. The Mishnah is talking about bedover she'ain by simon. There's no simon because had there been a simon, even though it's in the Shus Rabbah, you would have to be machzit. You would have to announce it. Almok so Rav holds simon also does have a simon. Ika and others, the Masla Shmait Bamanapshi, they learn not based explaining our Mishnah, but generally, the argument. Simon also does. Simon is going to be trampled. The Rabbah says, love a Simon. And Rabbah, his Talmud says, have a Simon. Now when you try to understand our Mishnah, why should there be a difference? The Krich is whether it's in the Shus Rabbim or whether it's in the Yachid. Shus Rabbim, you keep it, you can. If you learn that, if you learn that there is a Simon like Rabbah, it makes a lot of sense then. Because in the Shus Yachid, it doesn't get trampled on. So therefore, there's a simon. It's just Rabbah does get trampled, but Rabbah is a problem because Rabbah, we're talking about the item has no simon. That's why Shus Rabbah you can keep it. So why not keep it in Shus Yachid as well? Says the Gemara. Either lesbian, if there's no simon, the Shus Yachid. What do you mean call? What do you announce? Elalav, if there's a simon, and yet it says now Mishnah, the Shus Rabbah, Alma simon also does. Lo have a simon. Zaraya to Rabbah to you to the Rabbah. There's no simon. No, there's no simon. That's why in Shus Rabbah you can keep it. No, why Shus Yachid you can? Mach is mokum. Shus Yachid. You know what the simon is? Where you found it. Now, big machlek is a shaynim, and I should take another shaynim. How's it work? Take the Gemara literally. Mach is mokum means you announce the place, and the guy tells you what was there. That's one version. The other version is you announce the object, and they need to tell you the place where you found it. They need to tell you the place. Yeah, because Shus Rabbin will explain things that pushed around. They're going to move around. Yeah. So Rashi learns you announce the place, and the guy has to tell you the object. Taisus over here completely obvious. Said you want to touch my coming here. It says in our Mishnah. It says in a Bryce, Krichus Rabbin Shlo Yish Yochid Netel Mach. So you keep it. But the big bundles. Maybe Yochid Netel Mach. You have to announce it. Now Rabba. Why should big bundles be any different than the regular bundles? And wherever you are, you have to announce. Rabba Heichim Metaras Lo, Rabba Heichim Metaras Lo. How each one going to explain the distinction? Rabba Metara Tamei B'Simon. We're talking about that there was a simon, but it gets trampled on. But big ones, nobody steps on it, so therefore, wherever it is, you have to go back. And Rabba Metaras Tamei, that it's makam, and big ones don't get pushed around. The makar, Rabba Metaras Tamei B'Simon Kirchus, Rabba Metaras Lo yours Mishum, the middle people trample on. Bishop the Yachid Nekel Machri is the Yachid. You take it, the lame Bishop nobody tramples on. Va'alumas, the big bundles, Bein Bishop Rabba. Bein Bishop the Yachid Nekel Machri. Why? Even the Gabeyan, because they are the big bulky items, so nobody steps on top of them and nobody destroys the simon. So then it's Rabba also you have to announce it. Rabba who learns that it's makam, betal tamei. The makam, it's talking about makam. Kirchim is Rabba, why they get pushed around? The minshtive, they get pushed around. Makam is no longer a simon. Bishus a yachid chai v'hachid the lemi don't get pushed around. V'halumas and bundles bein bishus Rabba makes the yachid neitel machid. You have to announce why. Even the yakire, because they are heavy. Like Mishnah, they get pushed around. One more quick brayse. Toshma kichah shanachtum. It says in Mishnah, the loaf of the bread had actually yours. Hosher balabais, they belong to a private person. Chayla hasn't because it has a simon. Because everyone makes the bread a different way. Shabalabais, my time keep these the simon. Because there's a simon. The made the idea riftadinish inish. Everyone knows. Oh, this is that person's chalus. That person's chalus. The loishna the shusar rabbim. The loishna shusar yachid. Noitel machid. It sounds from here that even a shusar rabbim you have to announce it. So we see a simon that gets trampled on. It's still a valid simon. Kasha and Rabba. Alma says doesn't have a simon. You have to Rabba, Kasha and Rabba. Rabba said that in a Shusar Rabba, people trample on the simon, there's no simon. Amulach Rabba says, awesome, how you time, you know what the reason is? Because the aim ma'avidan ala oichel. That doesn't mean you don't trample on bread. It means you don't walk close to bread because the din is if you walk close to bread, you have to pick it up. Nobody wants to pick it up. Whoever gets it first, whoever walks away, keeps the distance. Therefore, their simon remains a simon. But you can Nochim they don't know this din, so they can walk on it. Nochim chayshik shofim. When they see a piece of bread on the ground, they think, well, somebody put it liberally and it's trying to put some voodoo stuff on us. That if we walk on it, who knows what's going to happen? Well, you can behema kalim. They don't know that either. But asla shchich behema kalim. Behema kalim might drag it across something. A club, sorry. Behema klavim. But asla in a place like shchich behema klavim. There are no animals around, so nothing happens. Nothing happens at all. Okay, we'll stop over here.